What do you mean this place has the highest turnover rate and no one's reporting why? Clint Darnell stood at the head of the boardroom, arms crossed, eyes narrowed at the quarterly report glowing on the screen. 15 stores, 14 were steady. One store 6, a downtown office supply location, had chewed through 6 employees in 3 months. No complaints, no whistleblowers, just resignations and silence. Clint had built the company from his garage 15 years ago. He knew every piece of equipment, every policy, every line of the employee manual because he'd written them. But somewhere along the way, layers of middle management, new hires, and distance had fogged up the view. He hadn't stepped inside Store 6 in over 3 years, and with no photos online and no one recognizing faces between locations, it was easy to get lost in the shuffle, especially if you didn't want to be seen. He stared at the resignation emails again, all short, all vague. He didn't like it. "I want a full report on that location," Clint said, but then paused. "Actually, forget that. I'll do it myself." The room fell silent. "Sir, we could," his assistant started. "No, I built this place to be better than that. If something's wrong, I want to see it with my own eyes." Clint shaved the beard he'd had for years, swapped his usual tailored shirts for a wrinkled button-down, added a pair of thick glasses, and used a temp agency under a fake name, Chris Daniels. He signed up for a 2-week data entry assistant role at Store 6. The disguise worked. He'd never met the current staff at that location, and the manager there, a man named Todd, had only been hired a few months ago. On his first day, Clint sat in the back cubicle, pretending to fumble through the outdated CRM system as he was trained by a young woman named Kelsey Price. She was patient, friendly, and sharp. "Don't worry, Chris," she smiled. "Everyone's slow the first week. You'll get the hang of it." But the moment Todd walked in, the air changed. He was tall, loud, and always looked like he was moments from snapping. "Price, you got time to babysit, you got time to finish that vendor sheet. Or should I send it to someone who can actually do their job?" Kelsey's face dropped. "Yes, sir," she said quietly, stepping away from Clint's desk. Todd turned to Clint. "You, new guy, stay out of the way, stay off your phone, and don't talk to me unless I talk to you." "Got it," Clint nodded, jaw clenched. He kept his head down but his ears open. Over the next few days, he saw it. Todd didn't manage. He bullied. He barked at employees in front of customers. He nitpicked mistakes and ignored wins. He called one guy Marcus, dead weight, and told him he was lucky to even have a job. When a shy cashier named Dana asked for help with a refund, he rolled his eyes and said, "Jesus, just use your brain for once." Clint watched as good people tiptoed through their shifts. Kelsey, who clearly cared and carried most of the workload, was the only one Todd didn't constantly berate, but even she looked exhausted. One afternoon, after a long phone call with a supplier, Clint heard raised voices from the break room. He walked over quietly and peeked inside. Todd stood over Marcus, jabbing a finger at him. "You think it's fine to take longer than 10 minutes just because you're tired? You don't get special treatment. You're not special. You screw up again, you're out. I don't care how many bills you got." Clint stepped back before they saw him. His hands were shaking. At the end of the day, Clint caught up with Kelsey near the lockers. "Hey," he said, trying to keep his voice even. "Is it always like that here?" She hesitated, eyes darting down the hall. "We try not to talk about it," she muttered. "It just makes it worse." "But someone must have said something," Clint pushed. She let out a bitter laugh. "People either quit or stay quiet. HR's useless. They just forward complaints to the district manager, and he's Todd's college buddy, so," she shrugged. Clint nodded slowly. His stomach turned. That night, Clint sat in his car in the dark parking lot, staring at the cracked dashboard. He'd built this company to be a place where people felt proud to work, a place where respect mattered. How had this slipped through? He tapped the wheel, thinking. He wasn't ready to blow his cover yet. He needed to see more, hear more, but one thing was already clear. Something was very, very wrong at Store 6. Clint arrived 15 minutes before opening and sat in the break room with a coffee that tasted like burned rubber. The lights flickered overhead. A crooked poster on the wall read, "Teamwork makes the dream work," its edges curling away from the wall like it wanted to escape. Kelsey walked in with her usual canvas tote and a cardigan draped over one arm. She noticed him sitting alone and gave a tired nod before heading to her locker. "You're early," she said. Clint glanced at the clock. "I figured I'd get ahead, still trying to figure out how the inventory system links to the sales reports." She exhaled quietly. "It doesn't, not directly. You have to cross-reference it manually. They've been promising an upgrade for 2 years. That seems inefficient." "That's the nickname of this place," she said under her breath. Todd burst in a few minutes later, slapping a clipboard against his palm. "Let's move, people. We've got 3 pallets coming in and no one's scheduled to unload them but me and Marcus. Again." He didn't wait for a response, just turned and left. Kelsey closed her locker without speaking. The pallets arrived mid-morning. Clint offered to help without hesitation. He wasn't supposed to handle warehouse tasks, but no one objected. Marcus, who looked like he hadn't slept in days, handed him a pair of gloves. "Appreciate it," Marcus said quietly. "It's been rough since they cut hours. Used to be 3 of us on mornings." They worked in silence for a while. The loading dock was cramped and poorly lit. Boxes were stacked haphazardly and shipping labels were half torn or smeared. No system, no safety ropes, no caution signs. Clint nearly twisted an ankle stepping off a misaligned dolly ramp. "Has anyone reported this setup?" he asked Marcus. "Couple times. Todd says it's not in the budget to fix. Said if we don't like it, we can go work somewhere else. So, people leave." Clint nodded once. Later that afternoon, a customer came in with a return, a laser printer still boxed, receipt in hand. Dana, the cashier, called Todd over to approve the transaction because the system had flagged it as non-returnable due to a minor discrepancy. Todd didn't even ask a question. He walked up, scanned the receipt, and turned to the customer. "Let me guess. You bought it, used it for a big print job, and now you want your money back." "That it?" The man blinked. "No, I realized I bought the wrong model." "Right, sure you did." Todd tossed the receipt back across the counter. "Return denied." The customer opened his mouth to argue, but Todd had already turned away. Clint watched the man walk out, shaking his head. He approached Dana once the coast was clear. "You okay?" She nodded too quickly. "He's worse when he's stressed." "Is anyone not stressed here?" Dana hesitated. "I'm just trying to make it to my 6-month mark. I need the health insurance for my daughter." Clint's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. The next few days revealed more cracks. The backroom inventory log was missing 2 entire shipments, but no one had noticed because Todd had signed them off as received. When Clint asked about it directly, Todd barked that it was above his pay grade to explain logistics to temps. Clint set aside his fake incompetence. He began tracing discrepancies in the system during off hours, staying late under the pretense of catching up. What he found made his stomach turn. There were over 40 flagged transactions marked as employee errors that had resulted in payroll deductions. Several employees, including Marcus and Dana, had lost between $20 to $50 per check. There were no formal write-ups, no appeals. He printed everything, tucked the sheets into a manila folder, and kept it in his locker under a stack of old vendor catalogs. One afternoon, Todd walked in holding a clipboard and called out, "Hey, Kelsey, my office, now." She looked up from her desk, confused. "Is something wrong?" I said now. She followed him in and the door closed. The blinds on the small interior window were drawn, but Clint could hear raised voices through the thin walls. 10 minutes later, she came out pale and quiet. She sat down at her desk, opened a drawer, and didn't move for almost 5 minutes. Clint looked over. "What happened?" She shook her head almost imperceptibly. He leaned in, voice low. "You don't have to tell me anything, just, are you safe?" She looked at him then, and something behind her eyes cracked. He said, "If one more vendor deadline is missed, it's on me." "Even though I submitted everything on time," he said. "If I don't like it, someone hungrier will take my place." Clint didn't respond. He couldn't. He just nodded once and returned to his desk. That night, he called an emergency meeting with the executive team off the books. Only 2 people were looped in. His longtime COO, Marlene, and the head of HR compliance, Arjun. He laid out the documents, the payroll deductions, the vendor discrepancies, and the complaints that had gone nowhere. "When did we stop checking our own managers?" Clint asked, voice low. Marlene pinched the bridge of her nose. "We've been stretched thin. We prioritized expansion over internal audits." Not anymore, Clint said. I want HR to do a full investigation starting tomorrow, quietly, but I'm not waiting for their report to act. Arjun looked up. What are you planning? Clint didn't answer. Not directly. The next morning he came in wearing his usual clothes, no disguise, no glasses. He walked through the front doors at 9 sharp. Todd was at the register, talking to Dana in a tone that could only be described as performatively annoyed. Clint walked straight up to him. Morning, Todd. Todd turned, confused. Can I help you? Yeah, Clint said calmly. You can gather your things. You're done here. The silence that followed was suffocating. Every head in the store turned. Todd blinked. What are you talking about? Clint held up a printed sheet from the folder. Payroll deductions without authorization, mishandled returns, creating a hostile work environment, and that's just the beginning. Todd laughed. A sputtering, nervous sound. Wait, who are you? Clint looked him in the eye. I'm Clint Darnell. This is my company. Dana dropped the receipt roll she was holding. Marcus stood up from his desk. Kelsey stared, wide-eyed. Todd's face turned from red to gray in seconds. You've got 5 minutes, Clint said. Security will escort you out. Todd looked around, as if expecting someone to speak up for him. No one did. He walked out without a word. Clint turned to the rest of the team. We're calling in temporary support from headquarters. You'll have help within 48 hours. Anyone who lost wages to those deductions will be fully reimbursed by end of week. No one moved. No one spoke. Clint cleared his throat. I owe you all better than this, and I intend to prove that starting now. Only then did Kelsey stand. She didn't say anything. She just nodded once. Clint stepped into the back office and closed the door behind him. He didn't sit. He didn't breathe easy. There was still a long way to go. Clint didn't want applause. He wanted clarity. After Todd was escorted out, the store was eerily quiet. No one cheered. No one clapped. Relief didn't show up right away. It never does after months of walking on eggshells. People simply returned to their workstations, unsure of what the next hour would look like, let alone the day. Clint stayed in the back office, reviewing internal reports and scheduling calls with legal and compliance. The investigation had to be airtight. Every employment file, payroll adjustment, and vendor record from the last 6 months needed to be pulled and re-verified. He brought in a regional operations consultant, Janine, to assist with the transition. She arrived within 90 minutes carrying a laptop and a folder of onboarding documents. No small talk, just business. By midday, Clint emerged from the office and asked to speak with the team. They gathered near the customer service counter. No one looked relaxed. Even without Todd, the weight of uncertainty hadn't lifted. I know today's been unusual, Clint said, but I'm not here to lecture or give a speech. I'm here to ask questions. And I don't want polished answers. He looked around the room at Dana, still standing rigid near her register, at Marcus, who hadn't taken a full lunch in over a week, at Kelsey, arms crossed, too used to disappointment to expect anything else. What do you need realistically to do your jobs properly? Not ideally, not someday, this week. There was a pause long enough to make him wonder if anyone would respond. Kelsey spoke first. We need inventory scanning devices that actually work, the ones we have drop connection every few minutes. It doubles the time it takes to do counts, and we get blamed for discrepancies. Noted, Clint said. What else? Dana adjusted her sleeves. The register software crashes on refund transactions. That's why I asked for help the other day. I wasn't stalling, I just didn't want to process it wrong and have it come out of my paycheck. Clint nodded. Understood. That'll be addressed. Marcus cleared his throat. Can we get a second person on morning shipments? I'm not asking for a full crew, just one more set of hands. I'm not trying to be dramatic, but it's been affecting my back. I've looked into disability coverage more than once. You shouldn't have to, Clint said. We'll restructure the shift. You'll have backup starting tomorrow. He turned to the others. Anyone else? A younger employee in a navy apron he hadn't spoken to before raised her hand slightly. I'm Naomi. I mostly handle the print station. We've been out of toner for the plotter for almost 4 weeks. I've submitted supply requests, but they go unanswered unless I follow up 3 or 4 times. I'll look into the vendor delays personally, Clint said. In the meantime, HQ will overnight what you need to keep that station running. They disbanded slowly. No one rushed back to work, they simply drifted. Clint didn't fault them. Trust doesn't return on command. He returned to the office where Janine had already started compiling a breakdown of overdue equipment and flagged system issues. "I've got a running list," she said. "And I reached out to procurement. Some of the delays were due to unpaid invoices. Todd had vendor emails redirected to a personal folder marked low priority. How far back does that go?" "Almost a quarter." Clint leaned against the desk, the pressure behind his eyes growing. "We'll cover the balances. I want every vendor relationship repaired. Start with the print station. Naomi's been trying to hold that together with tape and luck." Janine nodded. "I'll make the calls." By late afternoon, Clint stepped onto the sales floor again and noticed something subtle but unmistakable. People were talking to each other. Short exchanges, quiet, cautious, but happening. Dana was helping Naomi with a customer order form. Marcus was pointing out a new way to stack bulk paper to a temp from another store who'd been called in as backup. Kelsey was at the returns desk, processing a transaction for a woman holding a damaged laminator. "I'm so sorry about the wait," she said politely. "We've had some internal changes, but we'll take care of this for you." She completed the refund without issue. The woman nodded and left without complaint. Clint approached her. "That's the first return I've seen today that didn't end in a standoff." Kelsey gave a small, tired smile. "I've done a few. They go smoother when we're not being watched like we're trying to steal the register." He motioned toward the break room. "Can we talk for a minute?" She followed him in and sat across from him at the small table. He didn't bring up Todd. He didn't need to. "I want to offer you a promotion," he said. "Interim team lead, effective immediately. You've been holding this place together quietly for months. I noticed." She blinked but didn't look away. "I don't know if I want to lead. I just wanted to get through the day without someone yelling in my face." "I know, that's why I trust you to lead. You don't want power, you want peace. That's exactly the kind of person this team needs right now." She was quiet for a moment. "What would it involve?" "Scheduling input. Vendor communication. Conflict mediation. Nothing flashy, just structure. You'd have support from Janine and full authority to flag anything that looks off." Kelsey nodded slowly. "I'll try it. But if it starts to feel like I'm just patching holes again, I'm walking away." "That's fair," Clint replied. "If we're still patching holes a month from now, I haven't done my job either." They shook hands. No ceremony, just a new beginning. That evening, Clint stayed until closing. He didn't hover, just observed. A customer came in 10 minutes before lockup needing a rush copy job. Naomi handled it professionally, and when the print queue stalled, Marcus jumped in to troubleshoot. At exactly 8, the lights dimmed, registers closed, receipts reconciled. As the last employee clocked out, Clint stood near the entrance, holding the door open. "Thanks for today," he said to each of them. No one said much in return, but they nodded. That was enough. Outside, the streetlights flickered on. Clint stepped into the cool air and took a long breath. He wasn't proud of what he'd found, but he was proud of how the team had endured it and how they'd begun to move forward. Tomorrow would bring its own problems. But at least now, they'd face them together with someone finally listening. By the end of the week, Clint had returned to headquarters, but not to distance himself. He'd moved his desk into the open floor operations wing, the same level as the regional support teams. No corner office, no glass walls. Just a plain metal desk with a laptop, a notepad, and a direct line to every store manager, including the interim lead at Store 6. Kelsey's first week in the role had been steady, not smooth. No one expected instant transformation, least of all her. The morning schedules still ran tight, the software still glitched, and the extra help from sister locations was limited, as staffing shortages were not unique to one store. But the tone had shifted. On Thursday, Clint called her directly. "You have a minute?" "Sure," she said, stepping into the copy room where the signal was strongest. "I was just logging a supply variance. I want you to speak at next month's leadership summit, not about Todd or anything like that, about frontline leadership. What you've learned, what you've seen." She was quiet for a moment. "You're asking me to talk to your entire management team. I'm asking you to tell the truth. You've earned respect the right way by showing up, not showing off." "That's what they need to hear." "I'll think about it," she said cautiously. "But if I do this, I'm not editing myself." "I wouldn't ask you to." That same day, Clint launched a new internal policy. Each regional manager would now be required to spend 5 days per quarter working in store at a randomly assigned location. No special treatment, no title badges. Just an apron and a task list. The directive didn't go over quietly. Several pushed back, citing scheduling conflicts, project obligations, or strategic priorities. Clint offered a single reply. If you can't understand the people doing the work, you're not qualified to manage them. Meanwhile, the HR compliance team completed their review of Store 6's records. The findings were worse than anticipated. In addition to the payroll deductions and vendor mishandling, there were multiple flagged applications from qualified candidates that had been marked not a fit without explanation. A deeper look revealed a disturbing pattern. Every applicant dismissed without interview had a non-Anglo name or had checked the box identifying as bilingual. Clint revoked Todd's severance package and issued a formal report to the labor board. Legal documents were filed by the end of the day. There would be no quiet settlements. The following week, Clint returned to Store 6 unannounced. He didn't wear a disguise. He didn't make a speech. He arrived at opening, coffee in hand, and helped Naomi restock the toner cartridges that had just arrived. "I heard you helped redesign the supply request template," he said. "I just simplified it," she replied, scanning the barcodes. "It didn't need 5 layers of approval. Now it goes straight to the vendor queue." "Efficiency without the red tape," Clint said. "Imagine that." She smiled faintly and continued working. In the receiving bay, Marcus was training a new hire, Liam, a recent college graduate who'd taken the job while job hunting in his field. Clint waited until Liam stepped out for gloves. "How's it going?" he asked Marcus. "Better," Marcus said plainly. "We're still behind on a few shipments, but I've got help now. Makes all the difference." "You holding up?" "I'm getting there. I've got a new brace that helps with the lift support. Kelsey made sure it was covered under the revised equipment budget." Clint nodded. "Let me know if anything's still slipping through the cracks." "Will do." In the front, Dana was walking a customer through an online order return. Her posture was different, not guarded, just focused. She didn't rush. She didn't glance over her shoulder. When the transaction completed, the customer thanked her and left. Clint stepped up. "You've got a calm way of handling people." "I used to work in outpatient services," she said. "Before my daughter got sick." He paused. "I didn't know. I don't talk about it much. But I appreciate what you did. This place feels different now." "I'm glad. If you ever want to move into customer support training, let me know. We're building new internal roles. I'll think about it." As he turned, she added, "I've never had a boss who followed through before." That evening, Clint sat with Kelsey in the break room. The vending machine buzzed faintly behind them. "You still thinking about the summit?" "I am," she replied, "but I've been thinking about something else too." "What's that?" "This store needs a permanent manager, someone who knows the team." "I'm not sure I want to keep leading long-term, but I know who should." "Let's hear it." She pulled a small notebook from her bag and slid it across the table. 3 names, all internal, all respected. Let them shadow me for 2 weeks, then pick one. Clint looked at the list. He recognized the names Dana among them. No outside hires. "We've got everything we need right here," she said. He nodded. "I'll back whoever you choose." As they stood to leave, Clint paused near the exit. "You ever think about running operations full-time?" She raised an eyebrow. "You offering me your job, I'm offering you options. I'll take the summit speech first, then we'll see," he smiled, adjusting the cuff of his sleeve. "Fair enough." The next morning, the store opened exactly on time. No raised voices, no rushed apologies. Just the soft sound of printers warming up and the rhythm of a team that had learned how to breathe again. And for the first time in a long time, no one looked over their shoulder.